More on that breaking news on Donald Trump calling for a, quote, total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. Christian Whiton and Tammy Bruce are back with me. Christian, to you. Does this help him with certain elements of the Republican Party whose support he needs in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina?
I think it does, because there's a tremendous amount of frustration, especially over the last 7 years. We haven't seen the Islamists demonized. We've seen them embraced. Starting with his first inauguration, Obama actually reached out proverbially to Iran, the chief advocate of Islamism around the world. So there's great frustration with that. The problem is, of course, it's going to be counterproductive. What we need fundamentally to do is to get Muslims to turn on the Islamists. We need to get American Muslims to really turn on, to name and shame, call out those who want jihad, those who want Sharia. And what Trump's proposal does, unfortunately, is to push them toward the jihadists.
Does this sort of show Donald Trump as a strong person and in comparison with the president when he makes a statement like this on the 7th of December?
It portrays him as a leader. You might not like the nature of where he's leading you to, but I have to disagree with Christian a little bit in that I don't adhere to the notion that Muslims in general, or others who, if we seem to offend them or if they don't like our position, that they get pushed to a remarkably genocidal, crazy, savage theory. I'm going to presume that Muslims in America are like all the rest of us. They care about their future, their families, and safety. They don't want to be caught up in terrorism either. The world's in chaos right now, right? So when we talk about immigration, it's a very different dynamic than if none of this had been occurring. And I think that's why it appeals to the American people, because it addresses a little bit, at least in a temporary way, what it is that we're seeing here, where there's no controls. Obama admitted last night there's visa issues, and so I think that this might help at least people feel a little safer.
Christian, isn't this in stark and direct contrast to the general perception of the president last night? Things will be okay. I got my hands on things. Don't worry about it. We don't have to change anything. Donald Trump, I can change it with the stroke of a pen.
That's right, and it's sort of disappointing. You're seeing two extremes, and neither one, frankly, is that appealing. There is a alternative to defeating ISIS, as opposed to the Obama approach, which is obviously not effective. They've been at war with them for a year and a half. Ragtag army of 20,000 people that seemingly is beating a U.S.-led war. And sort of the other extreme, which is a complete invasion and occupation. It's the straw man Obama used in his speech last night, saying, of course, this would come into a morass. You know, there are alternatives to these things, just as there are alternatives to fighting Islam without banning all Muslims from coming here. But we're just not seeing those explored.
Ted Cruz responded to Donald Trump's statement this way: well, that's not my policy. Is he planning to run for vice president with Donald Trump? That is profoundly not his policy, but it was the gentlest, softest response of any of the Republicans.
It was very politic, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I think that this is why you see suddenly Ted Cruz taking over in Iowa. Whether you be evangelical or not, you want somebody who's a leader, who also, though, has some control over themselves, who can manage and negotiate these environments, while still also being a leader and knowing what actions need to be taken. Because something is going to have to change dramatically. This is only going to get worse. The American people want answers, and maybe Ted Cruz is going to have a few answers for us as well.
Okay, got it. Tamara Holder, Fox News contributor, is joining us on the phone. Tamara, what do you think about what the Donald said today?
Well, I think it's sad. That's the only word I have for this. I think that it's unfortunate that America is a melting pot, and America is supposed to be the land of homogenous gatherings of different people.
Right, but do the Democrats, do your buddies, the Democrats, like this? Do they think it shows Donald as extreme and out of touch, or do they fear he might be touching a raw nerve of millions of Americans who actually agree with him?
You know, I think it's both, to be honest, because there are a lot of Muslims who need to vote for somebody, and I don't see how any Muslim is going to vote for Donald Trump after what he said. I don't know how Mexicans can vote for Donald Trump after what he said.
Got it.
But at the same time, Donald Trump has a way with creating drama and creating a way for people to talk about this, things that everybody is actually concerned about. We are concerned about Muslim extremism.
Christian, before to you last, and before we close out the segment, until this past weekend, Chris Christie had not criticized the Donald. He criticized him harshly over the weekend, saying he's unqualified, and again today. Ted Cruz barely laid a gov on him. Is there a message in that Ted Cruz is the only still standing Republican for seeking the nomination who has not criticized the Donald?
Right, I think there is. Ted Cruz is leading in Iowa. If the Iowa caucus were held today, Ted Cruz would win, which would be a big jump in the overall race. And I think he's doing it smartly. He's realizing that the Donald is raising important issues, just doing them in an inapt way, and that Donald Trump is our party's Howard Dean. I think he's going to fade as we get closer to the actual polls in January, but he's raised some important issues. So if you can take that momentum and address the issues a bit smarter, if you will, then I think Ted Cruz can really benefit.